my managing editor, Emily Hockaday, has made a request. I'm really bad at this. That if anyone here is tweeting or mentioning us on Facebook or whatever, if you could tag us or tweet at us at Asimov's, that would be very much appreciated. And so I am putting in that word, which I was worried I would forget. I meant to say it at the beginning.
Okay, so actually now for questions from the audience, and please do speak into the microphone for posterity. So, any questions, comments, speeches? Ian, you look like you're.
You must have a question. Oh, I am going to tell a fun story about Ian.
Okay, sure.
So you asked me a question. Do you remember?
Oh, okay.
You don't? Well, then you ask me a story and I'll remind you.
Okay, Sheila, so tell them about my birthday.
So, I think this is actually a cute story. Thank you. Thank you so much for that question, Ian. Ian started working for us when he was pretty young, like really right out of college, pretty much. And we used to have pretty regular birthday celebrations for people, a cake or something. But I had an inspired idea, was that we would have a morning party for Ian, because it happened that his birthday was on a Tuesday, and Tuesday was the day that Isaac always came into the office. So this was great. I had him so cool. We told Ian we were having a big meeting, and I had gotten bagels and cream cheese for the meeting, and he knew that. So I said, but before the meeting, I said last minute, I ran up to him and said, I really need these Xeroxes to bring to the meeting. Can you please go and Xerox? And I gave him like this huge stack of Xerox, and then I didn't need it all. And said, please go and Xerox this, and then come into the meeting. So everybody was in the room. And then Ian came running in with all the Xerox material going, oh, the machine jammed, I couldn't do it all. And then we said, surprise! And the nice thing was that was the only birthday party that Isaac ever attended. Because he was there. I planned it because I knew he would be in, and he knew about it. I told him a week before. He thought it was a great idea. So he had his breakfast with all of us and celebrated Ian's birthday. And I always remember that as one of the fun highlights of the office, even if you've forgotten it.
So many wonderful memories of working for you.
Do you remember? You have forgotten that? Or does it come back to you now?
Dimly. I wasn't a morning person.
That's quite true. That's why the Xeroxes were behind. I think I did need the Xeroxes, but that's why they were behind. Anyways, but a real question from the audience?
Who do you folks think are going to win? Arnold Schwarzenegger's robots from Terminator, or Isaac Asimov's robots with the 3 laws of robotics?
Well, I don't think any of them really are that each of them are literary devices and they serve their purpose. But as I mentioned before, the robots that are emerging today really aren't anything to do with not only Asimov's robots, but most of the robots are fiction. They're literary, or like they say of the Star Trek transporter, it's not a physical device, it's a plot device. These are literary devices that they serve their purpose, but the real emergence of robots is going to be a lot more complicated, and not at all that that kind of simple dichotomy.
I will say though that sadly there's a lot of use of robotics in the military, and they have been dealing recently. I have seen articles dealing with the question that the robots are really good, but they, of course, don't have a moral sense, so they don't have an ethical sense. So they aren't programmed, at least at this point, to know, child from, a soldier from the other side, and so there is great concern about having atrocities through, and the problem will be, obviously the programming will only be as good as our programmers, and we know humans are not perfect, and sadly the positronic brain doesn't really exist. So that is an issue. I mean, I think a lot of roboticists take it seriously. They know why he had those laws, but whether they're actually able to do anything with it, it's up to whoever buys the weapons too, and they could disable anything, and there's no. So yeah, I don't know. But right now, of course, robots are more just helpful devices, but who knows? It's still a concern.
I think there's some discussions about autonomous driving vehicles. So one question I've seen that come up that seems very similar to free laws to me is the question of autonomous driving vehicles. And do they prioritize the safety and the life of the driver or the pedestrian or the person in the other car? And this is something they actually have to decide. And potentially there's should there be government regulations about that. So I do think that is rather relevant. That's been coming up. I do think that Asimov was right about that robots will not be evil unless they have a good reason to be. So I think he has an edge on Terminator there. But yeah.
I just actually published a story where a very naive AI self-driving car is trying to make that decision, but is really controlled by logarithms that have so little to do with the car's real feeling for the people who own the car. Just because the mother is on the PTA board doesn't give her more higher points than the high-level management person in the other car. So it's very interesting. It was a 3-page story in the magazine, but it packed so much into it, exactly what you were saying. And of course, all of that, I don't mean to be off on a tangent, but all of that thinking comes from the very, right from the start of thinking about robots and AI and robotics.
Didn't Isaac had this story in which there were like robot mosquitoes or something, tiny that were taking the place of pollinators and things, and we now have flying things that are the size of insects, I believe. So.
About the autonomous cars, my understanding of the problem is that they don't react well to the outside environment because people aren't obeying the rules. And the investigation of all the accidents in everyone's car is that somebody else had broken the rule and the car didn't know, doesn't know how to deal with other people who do not obey all the rules.
It's hard for robots.
Not that I want to go off on this tangent, but shouldn't they have known that from the very beginning, that human beings don't follow the rules? That's why so often things go wrong.
It's still hard even if you know that.
This is the plot of every story and everything. That to me, when I first read that article, I read an article on that, and I said, "Oh, come on! That should have been in the beta testing."
Well, the point is that the AI has obeyed all the rules.
Right.
So the fault of the accident is not actually the AI's fault.
But it doesn't matter. It's just like the pedestrian always has the right of way. It doesn't matter if the pedestrian is an idiot.
Well, the concept, though, which is kind of fallen out of favor currently, is that the pedestrians could participate in contributory negligence by breaking the rules and jumping out in the middle of the street and not the intersection or something.
But tell that to it.
Yeah, it sounds like the software was written by the legal department. As long as we're not responsible, that's all that matters.
You can't do that with
Legal
your
departments have
children.
way too much influence,
So,
Tell us about Isaac's view about appearing on the cover of the magazine.
well, that was not his idea. And there were, Bill made jokes about it. But he, of course, there are many, many magazines that have celebrity covers with, people on the cover, famous people on their covers. And also, interestingly, there was another magazine that still exists called Alfred Hitchcock's Mystery Magazine, and they often featured, even though they have nothing, to do with Hitchcock, but they often had his picture or drawings, caricatures of him on the cover, and they often, in their history, though not always, but will feature a little small picture of him on the cover or a silhouette or something. So that already existed, and so, but he was very happy when it became the art department. So the first 3 issues he's on the cover, and I don't know, I think someone in the press, maybe it was Charlie Brown, someone said, oh, his face was, they showed this front view and a side view, another side view was the fourth, it should go to the back of his head. And Isaac was not, he didn't think that was very funny, but he did mention it. So he said he was very happy when they shrunk his to a little cameo in the letter, in the O. And it was that way for a couple of years maybe, and then got rid of it altogether. And he did not mind that at all. We always had his photo in the editorial, inside, a little tiny photo of him. But he was not unhappy to see his face disappear from the cover.
But then the 3 guest appearances in the early 90s.
Well, we did have
Foundation novel.
yes, we did, and that was kind of harkening back. We had, well, he on the tribute issue, which we used a piece of art that Michael Whalen, beautiful piece of art, which is a painting of Isaac. And yeah, there's a really cute one, really cute. He had a story called, it was about this really bad little boy and his robot. And the artist did such a great job of making the kid look, it was a little kid, like 9 or 10, looked really punk with the hair standing up and everything. And then Isaac was like the inspiration for the robot, I think. And he's like this cool robot who's dealing with this really obnoxious kid, but the robot's got mutton chops and everything. That's a cute cover. I don't remember the third one.
The new Foundation novella, he was Harry Seldon.
Oh, right, right. I thought that was the tribute one, but no.
The bluish one, he was Harry
Oh.
Seldon. The orange one, he was the robot.
Okay.
And the green one was the tribute.
Okay. Yeah, so he got a kick out of the ones that he saw. He thought they were, I mean, he was like so taken, he was kind of taken aback by the one with the kid because he had really meant for this kid to just be obnoxious. And then the kid was like so cool. It's like, whoa, you wrote that? And he's like, well, guess I did. You know? So it was kind of cute. It was great. I thought it was Christmas without Rodney. Yeah. So yeah, it was fun to work with him. There were lots of, you know, he would tell us what he really thought about some things, you know, that he wouldn't have said publicly. And he had me, well, it started with an editorial he wrote where he was grumpy about something, and then I said to him, you know, I think you need to tone this down a little. And so he did. And then after that, and I was just the managing editor or whatever, he came in, if he wrote anything and he was worried that it was too caustic or anything, he would have me read it. I said, well, I'm your Olivia Langdon, because Mark Twain did that. Samuel Clemens did that with his wife. He had her read everything, and if she thought it was going to be, you know, too insulting or whatever, he would tone it down. So I said, well, I'll be Olivia Langdon.
I recommend that. I did that actually for my speech.
Yes, I'm glad you did. So, yeah, so I did that. But there wasn't much, you know, it was just like sometimes, because he really didn't want to be, he was so verbally adept, but he did never, it was like, you know, a boxer, if a boxer gets into a street fight, they can be arrested because their hands are a weapon. I mean, if they kill somebody with their hands, it's different from if an ordinary person does. And I think with Isaac, he knew that he could really be cutting if he wanted to, so he wasn't. So he would write postcards that said what he really thought, and then he would tear them up and throw them away and write a nice response to people. So, because he was really a very sweet person. So, I don't know how I got there from the art, but.
Okay, then I'll take one. In one of his autobiographies, he did say that he pretty much stopped reading science fiction and really didn't think that he had good taste in science fiction. So what was his input?
Well, so he was very hands-off, very intentionally hands-off. One time he'd been asked to do a new Hugo anthology of Hugo winners, and he came in, he was blown away. He said, I can't believe it. And he had read, he particularly had liked John Varley's Press Enter, which is a novella we published. And he said, I just could never imagine writing this stuff. this is so incredible, the field's just left me behind. But, you know, obviously his fiction is still being read. At least the last time I checked, they still had not managed to put his fiction into digital format. I don't know if that's still the case, but people are still buying his books. Supposedly, I've been hearing for quite a while now that there's going to be a mini-series based on the Foundation coming out
Or they get the guy from Chernobyl as Harry Sullivan.
Right.
It's pretty cool choice.
Yeah. So I keep hearing that. I haven't seen, you know, if that's how, I've seen things like that not happen, so.
Janet's death, who's
Well,
in charge?
Janet hasn't been in charge of the estate for a very long time. She turned it over to Robin quite a few years ago. So Robin is in charge of the estate, but I'm very rarely in contact with her, so I don't know. I mean, I'd love to see it. I hope they do it, but, you know, it's, I keep people who are, so we have 2 Facebook pages. We have one that was set up several years ago by a fan of the magazine, and that actually has the most members. It's got over 3,000 members, and has fairly active participation of readers on it. And then the other one is our professional one, which we publish, which is, I think, a lot of fun, because we publish a lot of things like our interviews with authors and blog posts they might write about stories they've written, or and just updates from the magazine. And I try to put some of that on the fan one, but I'm not supposed to put it on at the same time. So I'm supposed to put it on, and then I forget to do it. But we do have, so readers often will, if they see an update on this Foundation miniseries, they're always posting it. So I keep seeing new updates, but I haven't heard anything from the actual, like, my 17-year-old hasn't told me it's coming, and she's my ear on, you know, all things like multimedia, so.
In the meantime, I will actually highly recommend the BBC Foundation audiobook, except that the actor portraying the mayor of Terminus, Salvador Hardin, is played with an upper-class English accent. And I'm sorry, that character clearly Asimov was thinking of as a Brooklyn politician. So that didn't work, the rest did. I hope my wife will.
Got Marty Markowitz.
Yeah.
One important bit of advice, if you're listening to it on your iPad, and I'm not mentioning any spouses' names here, do not put it on shuffle. It is very strange to listen to on shuffle. But it is actually very good, and I think you can now buy it legitimately. I think the copy I bought, even though the royalties weren't going to the Asimov estate, but it later showed up in Amazon, credited with Asimov as a publisher.
That's good. More questions? I can tell more stories.
Please.
I'm trying to think now that I said
Tell us a story.
Tell you the story. I shouldn't have said that until I had.
I've been reading your magazine.
You've been.
Tell us a story. Is one of the stories. White lies, the translucence of white lies, the importance of telling a story, and I was trying to spoil too much, but
yeah,
it's
that's a cute
clearly
story.
descended from Asimov.
I wasn't. Yeah, that's an interesting. Well, what's interesting about that is that I always tell people when I'm on a panel at conventions that, you know, anyone can sell me a story. It's really, I don't even look at cover letters until after I look at the stories. And I consider every story that comes into Asimov's, I mean, consider that's like 650, 700 more stories a month. It's a lot. So I whip through a lot of them. But if something grabs my attention, I put it aside to read at a later time when I have a little more time. I want to read it slowly. And that story came in, and you know, I was planning to whip right through it, and it stopped me. And I was like, whoa. And so then what happens when it stops me, and when I do get around to looking at it, I make sure I'll skim sometimes to the ending, and whoa, then it was great. You know, the whole story really worked. It is about a marriage where one of the partners is a robot. But it's very interesting how it develops, as the story develops, and it is very much has to do with, I say you're right, there's a real Asimovian influence. Well, it turns out this woman is a she's a pharmacist in New Jersey, and this is perhaps her first sale or a very early sale for her. I'd never heard of her before, and it's just a really lovely story. Is it the something of White Lies, the trans?
Yeah, translucent was my guess, but I think that's
That's
wrong.
something
White
right.
Lies, pretty confident.
But it's very, I do recommend it. Mazago, I think is her last name. And it's interesting because, of course, robots are stand-ins for human beings, and science fiction is a look at the human condition, but there's so much you could do to explore that. And the story is so much more interesting than if you read it in the New Yorker, and it was just a couple, and they didn't have, and one of them wasn't a robot. It's just, that's what I say, if I read the same story in the New Yorker, but you took out the really intriguing stuff about, AI design and everything, and you just wouldn't sell me on it,
But you usually wouldn't read it in the New Yorker, because as I pointed out, Barnes & Noble, the New Yorker has to start with something annoying, and most of your stories don't, except the two that you chose to be read at the last reading for the anthology with Alan
Oh, they
Steele.
weren't annoying.
They started out very
So,
classic.
well, I'll tell you. So Flash and I met at this, it was supposed to be a book launch, except my publisher has never brought out the book. And he's paid for the book, but he's never brought it out, and anyone's guess is good as mine when this book is going to come out. But the book is Hugo and Nebula Award-winning stories from Asimov's a decade, so from 2005 to 2015. Now, when it came to inviting authors, I had to give people who were willing to come and live close enough to the city, and nobody does. But I did have two very willing people. Sarah Pinsker, who wrote Windwell Road, and wonderful story. Oh, great. And Alan Steele, who had a story in the book, a wonderful story set on Mars. Anyways, both of them won either the Hugo or the Nebula for their story. Their stories were well liked by many people, including Andy, So, but to be a Hugo Award-winning story, you often are dealing with major problems, major issues. You're not, Hugos don't tend to go to stories that are funny or just funny. They can be funny, but they still have to have a major issue. Even The Queen has some very serious issues in it, even if it's one of the funniest stories I've ever read. So both stories, Flash felt they were both kind of downers. Well, they were also just reading excerpts from the story. So they were reading the part, the hook that gets you into the story. And then in both cases, the resolution is not downbeat, not particular, it's the resolutions
Spoiler.
both are, whatever, they both have interesting resolutions. But, so they were both a little sad. But it's people came away, so my book wasn't there, but I had managed, Barnes & Noble had managed, they'd done a great job, they pulled off, they had huge stacks of both authors' books. Sarah at that point only had her short story collection out, her novels now out, and Alan, of course, had a whole bunch of books. And they sold like hotcakes, and Barnes & Noble told me they were very pleased with the evening. As far as they were concerned, they didn't care what books sold. They sold a lot of books, so they were very, very happy. They said, "Oh, this is great, got a great turnout. She sold a lot of books." So hopefully someday the a decade of Hugo and Nebula Award-winning stories from Asimov Science Fiction Magazine will appear, but I don't know when that's going to be. Prime Books. So we'll see. It right now it's tentatively scheduled for July, but we'll see. I do have another anthology coming out. This has nothing to do. This is for the first time. I've had 27 anthologies, I think. Maybe I should say 26. And my very first anthology that is not in some way connected to the magazine, and in fact is an original anthology. MIT Press came to me and asked me if I would do, they've been doing a series called 12 Tomorrows, and they said they decided they wanted to, the first time they've invited an editor, an outside editor, and also the first woman to ever be asked to be an editor. And so I have, in fact, I have to finish up my, going over the copy editor manuscript and answering the copy editor's questions this weekend. But that book is scheduled to come out, I believe, in July, and I believe that one really will come out in July. So it's not called exactly, it's called, it's called 12 Entanglements, Tomorrow's Friends, Tomorrow's Friends, Lovers, and Families. So it's a collection of, it's 10 stories about relationships of the future and technology. And then there's an interview with Nancy Kress and some really interesting art by a Russian artist, Tatiana Plakova. She does mathematical art, very interesting artist. So anyway, so that's the book. So this has nothing, this is just my little advertisement. But hopefully I will have a book launch for that and it will really be there. Yes, but yeah, I think we do publish a lot of stories. I still see Isaac's influence. And I see a lot of people, a lot of even young people will say to me, oh, I found your magazine because I was just looking up Asimov. And I was looking up online and I didn't even know there was such a thing as science fiction magazines, but because they were looking for Isaac Asimov. And so I think that our association with him still really works for us. And I always enjoy it when I get a chance to do a robot type story. I don't think I've ever really had enough in my inventory to pull off like a special robot issue or something, but and also readers want a salad, they don't want everything to be the same. But I always enjoy that. I love seeing his influence on the fiction. Several years ago, not long after I started editing, so it's quite a few years ago now, I got this terrific story from Robert Reed, and it was so, I can't think of the title, but it was playing with Nightfall, and it was so inspired by Nightfall. So I was actually able to go to the estate, and I didn't have a lot in my inventory. That was it. So I had the room, and I went to the estate, and they gave me the rights. I reprinted I reprinted Nightfall, and I ran it along with Bob's version of Nightfall, which was a fun thing to do. And I like being able to do that. My latest editorial, which I think was partly inspired by Flash, thank goodness you reminded me, is called Happy Birthday, Isaac Asimov. I would have maybe missed the centennial.
So much of stuff. The last 3 days there have been 3 articles. There's an article in Science Magazine, I sent it to you, and there's other stuff coming out.
Yeah, there's quite a bit, and of course he was also
#Asimov 100.
It's also the subject of the Alec Nebula Lee book that I'm glad you didn't give away your rights to your photograph to. Well, though it's a very interesting book. And yeah, I think, interestingly, I think it's easier to get copies of his work than, say, Clark's, for the most part. I don't know about Heinlein, if it's, how much
It's gotten better, actually. Michael Mace pointed out in the early days of ebooks when he was analyzing it, that Heinlein was almost unknown in ebooks. That has changed. And Asimov, everything I've looked for in his fiction recently, I have found, but there are so many that,
Yeah. Well, one thing Isaac always believed was that as long as people were willing to pay him something, it didn't have to be a lot, but as long as, that he was always very happy about having his work reprinted because he felt that it would get, well, he liked people to read his work, but also he felt the more it was out there, the more people would be interested in his next book. And the Heinlein estate had sort of the exact opposite attitude, which was that, we tried to, they wanted thousands of dollars for stories if you wanted to reprint them. So I think that's one reason that Isaac was the material was made accessible for so long. I don't know anymore, but I know as long as he was alive, and certainly in the early days of the estate. And I think, and certainly, as I say, I keep finding people who, I keep hearing from new readers, so very, that's gratifying. I think he'd be happy. I don't think he needed to be the most famous person, 30 years after he died, but I think that he really he would be very happy that people were still meeting and talking about him. He'd be very comfortable with that.
One book probably go on for.
An easy introduction to the slide rule.
which I liked.
Really?
That might be a little hard to find.
So a follow-up, if I may, about electronic publishing. We are a mixed marriage. I am heavily into ebooks, but my wife actually likes what she doesn't like me calling dead tree.
Joining wages.
Yes. Wikipedia is very coy about Asimov's circulation in electronic form. For the print edition, you can actually see it.
Oh, we said that.
There was a lot of discussion on fiction mags about the circulation for analog Asimovs and fantasy and science fiction, and people were really shocked by. These are people in fiction mags. Are you in fiction mags?
I was, but the new system, I couldn't deal with it.
Groups.
I'm
So-
on it, but I don't go.
Some people, someone named Barry Molderberg and someone named Robert Silverberg and Clute and Paul DeFilippo and stuff, and people were just shocked, but the figures are so small now. I mean,
The print
they're
figures.
just,
The print figures are small, but it's still in the black, and they're still publishing us. And the print, as I say, is the way that we are also a form of promotion. You can send a stack of print issues to a convention or, to something, an event, and people will pick them up and look at them. You can't really do that with a digital, and people just don't even look at digital stuff that's sent to them as promotion material. But, so we're still, and you have to keep in mind that those print subscribers, a large percentage of them, and this is our most profitable subscriptions, are people who, they subscribe to us directly online. Their subscription, so we get 100%, we don't have to pay any of it through a vendor, and then we just have to pay expenses, and then the rest of it we get to keep. Whereas, if you sold through a newsstand, which we do sell some, it's not a lot, we have to split that with the distributor and the newsstand. By the time we get our cut,
returns and.
it's not very much. And we do actually, the newsstand really exists to a large extent partly as promotion again. It's not, we're not making a fortune off it. We do a little. We do make some. So finally, our digital, we're doing good. I do send the figures to Locust. I think, this has sort of been historically, we don't have to. We have to print the U.S. Post Office insists we print our
Second class.
Right, our circulation figures, which is unfair to us compared to, say, all those online magazines who don't print, they don't tell you their figures. They don't tell you how many people are paid. Okay, they're all reading for free, and they're listening for free, but they're not actually paying. The number of people who actually are paying for Clark's World, or, so Strange Horizons does a fundraiser, and they raise 13, well, it used to be 13,000, maybe it's more now, once a year. And that pays for their editorial cost, which is pretty low compared to our editorial cost. But that doesn't pay, they don't pay any salaries. It's all volunteer labor.
You're not
And
volunteer, you actually get paid.
I actually get paid a salary, I get paid benefits, I have, vacation time, I have health care, if I have, I have an office that I don't go, I have an office 2 days a week, I work at home 3 days a week, that's, and I timeshare my office. It's a real job, it's been a terrific career, company sent me to Ireland for Worldcon. They didn't send me to Brooklyn. Myself to Brooklyn. But, they're real benefit. The magazine is still supporting my salary. My assistant, she's half on the magazine, half on analog. And certainly the cost of both the print and the digital. There are costs for a digital magazine. It's not just magic. So we may not, we have very healthy figures, and you have to think back to the old days. Yes, we had far more subscribers, and many of them were great, but a lot of them came through these
Publishers Clearinghouse.
Yeah, so Publishers Clearinghouse, the remit became so little.
Yeah.
So we used to get 11%, and then it went down to like 6. So they got to the point with Publishers Clearinghouse where the remit cost, you were getting less from a subscription from Publishers Clearinghouse than it cost to produce the magazine. So just because we had these very inflated subscription figures, doesn't mean we were in any more in the black than we are today. Yes, I'd say we did have, and then we also had these kind of disreputable people. There were a lot of them, and this hurt FNSF too. That would get in, and then they would go to the and they would offer the subscription, but they would keep like 80%. And so it's funny. We always honored those subscriptions because we didn't feel that our readers should be hurt.
Publishers.
But we would try to get them to subscribe back, the renewals through us. But now, a lot of it is done directly to us. So our print subscriptions are really quite profitable. And then the digital are very healthy. They're very healthy. It's a different breakdown, but we don't do digital directly. You have to do it either through like Amazon or Barnes & Noble or whatever. But yes, Magster is great.
Publishers Clearinghouse, when I was thinking of dealing with them, they get all the money for the subscription, and what happened is when you get the renewal, you get the money on the renewal. And of course, 80% of the people who subscribe to the Publishers Clearinghouse never renewed, so you're screwed. So
Yeah, that was really. Yeah, that was always an issue. So what you're looking at now, when you see those figures, they're not very exciting, but they are all solid. They're all, and we're constantly, we try. When we're here, we come to the Brooklyn Book Festival. You guys should all come by and visit us.
Get all the great photos I took, right?
Yeah, that's great. We do, and that's a
3
lot
blocks
of
from my
fun.
house.
It's right over here.
Right up there.
Yeah, right over there.
It's
I know where I
literally,
am right now, but
it's literally 3 blocks away.
it's always fun. And our table is always incredibly popular. And this year we got Andy Duncan to travel all the way from Maryland to come for it. And we've had Bob Reed come one year, and we've had more local people. Tom Perner would come from Philadelphia. So we often have authors there. And it's a fun afternoon. So, and I think we've seen some, we can't do that in every city because we don't have a presence, but it helps, when we do that. And we send out issues to the Nebulas and to Worldcon, to various places that ask, usually not Worldcon, but smaller regional conventions will ask to send back issues, which is nice. That's the other thing you can do with back issues. What are you going to do with them? Oh, we can send them to this convention, and then it may bring about a new subscriber. Keeps the magazine in the air. So yeah, it's not an easy industry. Magazine industry isn't easy for anyone, but we are still profitable. So, and you know, we're still paying real salaries to a real editor. You know, I mean, not saying the editors aren't real, but I'm getting a salary, being paid for what I do, and I think every editor should be paid for what they do. So I think, and you know, same is true at Analog, and I don't know if that's figures, but I suspect similarly true. So, yeah, it's working out fine right now.
We are so grateful for all work that you do. Thank you so much for that. And, my quick comment in this regard. I'm not sure that author or publishing right were kept in this case, but I found several Asimov's books translated into Russian in a tiny village's library near Poltava. You probably never heard of this name. It's a small town in Ukraine where I was spending my vacation with little son and my dog. And I was dying from boredom because I forgot to bring books. And Asimov just saved my vacation because I found several books of his, and one of them was Chemistry of Life and Chemicals of Life, published in 1954. And the reason I'm reading paragraphs from his book, which were published in 50s and 60s to my students nowadays, that even after 60s, 70 years since he wrote these words, they still actual, and they still modern, and they still have impact on people. So thank you very much for holding this flag and pulling ahead science fiction in the name of Isaac Asimov.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
But I'm afraid Robert Heinlein did complain bitterly about publication in the Soviet Union, that apparently the Soviet Union decided what the royalties they would pay to him were, and it was an unconvertible ruble, so they say, come and get the money if you want, no negotiation. So I think it's a bit like Publishers Clearinghouse. You did eventually buy legitimately merchandised Asimov books.
You know, it's
Well, just there, I think about
I mean, it was an interesting thing. There were some legitimate translations, and they weren't great. And certainly before the wall fell, it was rough. And most authors weren't thrilled, but they, on the other hand, they were happy that they were known. I mean, and Heinlein is a special case. But
Always.
many people were like, you know, this is at least the people in Russia or the Soviet Union are reading my work, you know. And so now it's much better, of course. And I had an interesting experience. I was in Prague, and I got in touch with some. Anyways, it turns out this woman, lovely woman, had a garden party, and she invited all of Czech Science Fiction Society. Now, 3 of the people were away because I was there the same weekend Rokon was in Helsinki, but that was fine. But everybody, there were lots of people there. And they were interesting because they were writers, and they were editors and translators. And I had a really great conversation with a couple of translators. They were saying how there were always like 2 books the Czech government had approved or whatever, you know. Like everyone had grown up reading the exact same science fiction books because they were the only ones available. Then after the wall fell, they had such lucrative careers because suddenly they could translate the entire history of science fiction. And they could pick, you know, what to translate. They said they had great careers, just, you know, because they'd been, you know, managers being able to translate. And now that it was actually going to be paid for, people were going to. So, you know, it's not the same everywhere. But yes, we have tremendous piracy in India. Lots of people love us in India. I hear all the time. I get so many submissions from India, but when we talk about subscription figures, they're practically really tiny because our magazine is immediately pirated, and then we write, say, take it down. They do, but huge amount of people reading it for free in India, and this is true in other countries too. And so, yeah, our reach is certainly farther than any circulation figures show, sadly.
When I was doing Science Fiction Chronicle, I used to have 30 subscriptions in Sweden, and it dwindled away, and what it was there was some guy who was getting it and then immediately translating it to Swedish and publishing everything. And so why do they have to subscribe to mine when they get it for free? So Gee, thanks.
Or a lot of software sells one copy in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a sad truth.
Well, Lest Darkness Fall will never be published in Saudi Arabia. Remember the last few paragraphs?
I'm afraid I didn't finish it.
Huh?
I'm afraid I didn't finish it.
It's where he advises someone there's a guy going to be born called Muhammad and he should be killed immediately.
Well, that's a better explanation than for nicest software being a hardware dongle in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, that's not really that funny.
1939 novel.
Right. But anyway, so it's been great. Thank you so much for inviting us. It was really fun, and I'm glad you put together this celebration.
Delighted. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you all for coming, too.
And these were for you.
Oh, nice. Thank you. Thank you so much. They're beautiful. Oh,
Who wants
lovely.
the FBI file? Anyone? You want it?
Kenneth?
I certainly do, but I think I should not be the first to leap.
Here. And take his obituary from this up front.
I have a photo in here if anyone wants to look at. This is a picture that J.K. Klein took of me and Isaac in 1986.
Great.
It's at a PhilCon.
It's really great.
And I actually have it up on my bulletin board because J.K. sent me a copy, but I decided to do everything legitimately. So I got in touch with the University of California that has his estate, and they were so gracious. They were so fantastic. They actually sent me the original, not the original, but a high resolution of, so it turned out what I hadn't realized that in the background there was some guy over in the corner. The one he had faded. No, and it's not there because they gave me permission to black out all that. It's more like my original one I have. But it's hard to believe I was that young. My kids were like, "Oh, you look like that one."
Yeah. Got pictures of you going way back.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. I just think that this is one that I was given, so I love it that I have it. I have it on my bulletin board at work.
Pictures of you don't tell me back here.
Yes,
Yeah.
but do you have pictures of Sheila with Isaac?
I don't know.
I think this is
That's
the
the point.
only one. You know, it was before the days I try to explain to my daughter.
yeah.
They
I have
didn't
a
have
lot of
cell
photos.
phones. They're like, how could you not have pictures of you with Isaac Asimov? I'm like, well, we didn't have a camera in the office.
I have a lot of stuff that's not scanned in.
But this
I
one
wish we
was made,
had.
it's so great.
Yes, isn't it? So this is fun. I wanted to reprint. Once you read the editorial, you would know why. I wanted to use the cover from a party. There was a 40th anniversary edition of Pebble in the Sky, but oh my God, I tried to get in touch with Doubleday, and it's like you have to send a written request and then wait 3 months. Now, of course, I was doing it a week before I needed it. So we went with our cartoon, that we've had for years. It was fun. So it was their loss, not mine. I wasn't that, I was actually at Comic-Con trying to work it out. I went to talk to people that work there, and they were all like, "Oh, wish we could help you." We can't. So, anyways, it's been so much fun to come here today, and hope you'll all subscribe if you aren't already subscribing.
What, you don't have the whole list memorized?
Digital, you don't get the digital subscription list, right?
No, we don't. That's another thing. So we can't. So we can, to our print subscribers, we can, send in something. We have on occasion done. I think some people send us their email to the print. So we did last year send out a newsletter. I think they ever did that again, but they sent out a fun newsletter with a lot of upcoming event information. But we can't do that with the digital because the Amazon and they keep that all close to their chest. So.
Apple too, and it's a deliberate part of the strategy, and I don't like it.
Yeah, I wish I don't think any publisher does, but that's I think that many publishers would like.
There's something in the magazine saying for a special treat or something, send us your email address.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of, that would be clever, but I don't know. And I don't.
staff time
Here's a
dealing
surprise
with it.
story for you send us your email address.
What?
You get a special story if you send us your email address.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. Well, we have had, yeah. That's an interesting ways to try, but yeah, so I won't be here for the centennial, but be interested. I mean, not the centennial, the bicentennial is what I meant to say. But this has definitely been a fun celebration.
Thank you very much for coming. So I guess a round of applause for our panelists.
Thanks to everyone for coming and participating.